Welcome to What Would Happen If, where no question is too trivial. A world where someone might ask, what would happen if I took a piece of string and attached it to a round object and then, well, threw it?
On tonight's show, what would happen if your wallet was in the line of fire? Would it save you? And if you took a rubber balloon, went a bit bigger and blew it up? And what would happen if you tried to calculate the speed of light using a plate of cheese?
I'm right-handed. I always have been right-handed, and I don't expect it to change. It seems that whatever hand you naturally start using, that's the hand you carry on using for the rest of your life.
But what if you tried to turn yourself from being right-handed to being left-handed? Could you make the change? Well, we are going to see. We found a human guinea pig, 37-year-old mother of two, Sue Rose. She's a right-hander, but she's going to be forced to do everything the other way around for a whole month. Can we make her as competent as a lefty than a righty? And will it affect her in other ways? It's often said that if you force someone to change hands, it can cause all manner of psychological problems. Will Sue be a gibbering wreck in 30 days' time? About 10 to 15% of people are left-handed. So what makes you one or the other?
Some people are right-handed and some people are left-handed because that's the way they're born. We know that actually because of a very interesting study looking at babies in the womb, where somebody looked at babies sucking their thumb even before they were born, and 90% of them suck their right thumb and 10% suck their left thumb. And so this can't be learned or anything like that, it's just the way they are.
OK, so it's all in the genes. But we're hoping we can fix that. First thing for Sue, some rigorous tests on her left hand to see just how good or rubbish she is before we change her. And that includes the dot test. 30 seconds to fill in as many of these little circles as possible, first with her right hand and then with her left. And we'll be testing her again in 1 month, when we'll see just how she got on as a lefty.
This is Dr. Nikki Woolmore, a ballistics expert specialising in forensic science. She currently works for the MOD's Defence Ordnance Safety Group. We could tell you exactly what she does, but then we'd have to kill you. Nikki did her PhD in ballistic armour. This may look like a ballistics range to you, but to Dr. Woolmore, it's a place she calls home. Today, we're finding out whether a money clip or a wallet is more effective at stopping a bullet. In May 2007, Dorothy Sanders was in a bank in Chicago that was robbed by armed men. Shots were fired and a bullet lodged in her side, but only after it had been deflected from a wallet she was carrying in her chest pocket. To help with the analysis, we're using 2 different materials. The first is a block of photographic gelatin, which enables us to see the penetration of the bullet. The second is aramid, short for aromatic polyamide. It's the fabric that's found in bulletproof vests. A laser sight is used to line up the targets, and we're firing a 9mm bullet from 10 metres. So it's one jam-packed wallet filled with cards, coins, receipts and a photo of the family dog up against one elegant billfold.
Stand by.
First up, it's the wallet.
Firing now.
This footage is from our high-speed camera, and it's not looking good.
The wallet actually performed not very well. The round penetrated the wallet, the aramid, and went straight through our ballistic gelatin. What we initially did was a firing, which fired straight into the aramid and then ballistic gelatin. If we compare the results from the wallet on the left, the maximum temporary cavity formed when impacting is much bigger, as this seen on the right, than when we actually had no wallet.
So to win, all the money clip has to do is stop a speeding bullet. We're using paper instead of money because willfully damaging money is frowned upon.
Stand by. Firing now.
Like a lot of forensic science, it's the tiny details that often tell the greatest story. And the use of a high-speed camera, shooting at 1,000 frames per second, allows us to see what we otherwise wouldn't be able to.
What we're actually looking at is part of the aramid has actually gone inside our ballistic gelatin, and hence why we've got this colouring shading. Though this actually might not look much, this actually formed a cavity at 23.5 mil. Now if you work out what 23.5 mil is, and you put a permanent cavity in good enough any side of your body, that's actually quite significant. Comparing our final results, in our wallet we did actually have coins, but what we found is during the impact, the 9mm actually just pushed all our coins out of the way and just went straight through the wallet, and clearly seen by a high-speed camera, it went straight through the ballistic gelatin. I think if we'd actually had sort of coins which are more compact, this could have actually helped the wallet perform better. But for this occasion, our money clip wins.
We've got ourselves a right-handed guinea pig, 37-year-old Sue Rose, and we're trying to turn her into a left-hander over the course of a month. At first, things are turning out to be a bit tricky.
Can't even get the butter out.
With her right hand, she is an internationally ranked squash player, capable of doing this kind of thing in her sleep. With her left, though, 1-0 to her 5-year-old son then. It's often said that making people use their wrong hand can cause psychological problems. George VI's stutter is often attributed to him being forced into becoming right-handed.
It was a bit cat-handed, picking it up this way.
We'll be keeping an eye on Sue on that front. It is suggested that only humans develop handedness, so why don't other animals?
About 2 million years ago, a number of things happened to humans. One of them was that we began to be right-handed. We know that from looking at stone tools. They're made by right-handers rather than by left-handers. The other thing is we probably started to develop language, and the fascinating thing about language is that language is in the left half of our brain for most people, and it's the left half of our brain that controls the right hand. So at the same time, we're both becoming right-handed and we're getting language in our left hemisphere.
So it seems to be related to the way our brain is wired for language.
And it's not just handedness. People tend to favour either one side of their body or the other for a variety of different tasks. Take your eyes, for example. You're either right-eyed or left-eyed, but how can you tell? Well, what you do is you hold your hands in front of you like this, with a little space, focus on something distant, and then bring your hands slowly towards you. Keep focusing, and eventually you'll reach one of your eyes. Whichever eyes you reach, that's which eye is dominant. So, for example, I'm right-handed, but I'm left-eyed.
Various studies have suggested that on average, left-handers are richer than right-handers, better at tennis, baseball, and bizarrely, seeing underwater. So well worth Sue keeping at it. But first though, everything is just a little bit uncoordinated. Issue is partly one of approach. Suddenly making this switch becomes tricky because it's involving her in a whole new method of coordination. Alongside the issue of strength and control with using the wrong hand, there is the problem of how to learn to manoeuvre the arms and fingers into new positions to achieve what previously came naturally.
But I feel like I'm standing really uncomfortably to get the right position to get the knife, across the toast to get it.
It's a bit bitty.
Yeah, just a little bit.
We'll leave her to struggle on, and later in the show, come back to see just how well she's done when the month is up.
Oh, good.
What would happen if you locked not 1, not 2, but 3 leading academics in a room and gave them 10 minutes to answer a hypothetical question? This is Brains in a Box. Today's question is, what would happen if the polar ice caps melted? Time starts now.
Of course, most people think of it simply in terms of ice melting and sea levels rising. What happens if the ice that's floating in the sea melts? Yes. So the ice in the North Pole, if that melts, the sea levels won't change at all. Ice has already displaced the weight of water anyway.
Ice caps are made. It isn't like ice cubes, and it might well snow harder.
we could get a bigger ice cap. Not the ice caps melting would destroy life, it's whatever causes the ice caps to melt.
Well, unless, of course, people use technological ice. I mean, the Dutch, after all, have been doing it for some time.
Barriers of that size are quite another matter, isn't it? One crack and the whole country's wiped out suddenly.
The Earth's shape will be slightly different. Would this affect the gravitational pull?
It would certainly affect the tides. The sort of the bulge, which at the moment is part of the tide system.
Even a 60-metre rise in sea level, so it's only a 1 in 100,000 change to the radius of the Earth.
But the ice is less dense than water, so the fact that the ice melted and produces a denser substance will perhaps counteract this dimensional effect.
It's 29.3 million cubic kilometres of ice. That would equate to 26.1 million cubic kilometres of water. That's the difference in the density, yes.
We'll leave our brains in a box for a moment as they consider their top 3 conclusions. Still to come, we find out whether our righties become a lefty.
Not too bad at all.
And we ask what would happen if you went large with a rubber balloon.
If something's fat at one...
Back to our brains in a box, and we gave 3 leading academics 10 minutes to answer the question, what would happen if the polar ice caps melted?
Removing ice from the poles.
Presenting their conclusions is Professor Jim Al-Khalili.
In third place is something called the albedo effect, which essentially is the Earth's ability to reflect the sun's heat. Now, if the solar ice caps melt, the Earth can't reflect the sun's heat so efficiently, so global warming would happen even more quickly. In second place, ice that's on land, which melts and falls into the sea, will certainly raise the sea levels by anything up to several tens of metres. This leads to the number 1 conclusion, which is that this would very dramatically affect life on Earth. Many low-lying areas would be submerged. An interesting point to add to this, of course, is that the land that contained the ice caps, once relieved of its burden of ice, may actually rise out of the sea ever so slightly. So it's not clear that the overall total area of habitable land will actually go down.
We've been forcing our right-handed guinea pig, Sue Rose, to do everything left-handed for a whole month to see if we can make her as good on her left as she is with her right. At first, she's been finding it a bit tricky.
Oh, good. That's a special pen for when Mummy's got to start using left-handed things.
But all the practice is starting to pay off.
Not too bad at all.
One problem, though, is the world is very much geared to right-handers, which, as any left-hander will tell you, doesn't make life easy for them. But help is at hand. Note the right-handed shape. The left-handed shop sells everything you need to be as dexterous as a right-hander, including a left-handed mouse, keyboard, and even a left-handed clock. So what are their most sought-after items?
And of course the corkscrews, which are always popular, especially at parties. If you put them down on a table and all the right-handers can't open all the wine, so that's all.
Right, so a corkscrew I would use like
you
that.
Turn it clockwise. The thread is so actually reversed.
And that would just unscrew it, so that's no use to me.
So if you put it in your other hand,
hold on.
You push it away from you. The idea is
anti-clock.
Yeah, you get more purchase pushing away from your body. You're trying to push into your body. You don't have the same.
Yes, that makes sense because my thumb is.
Along a few bits to Sue to help her along, including a left-handed bread knife with serrations on the opposite side to usual. And it certainly seemed to help. Better even than her right-handed performance 2 weeks ago. Straight-cut toast now the order of the day at the Rose household. Coming up, the results of her test after 1 month of left-handedness.
What if you wanted to stop being a loser in life and start to be a big fat winner? Statistically proven ways to make you a winner in the game of life. Rock, scissors, paper. By chance alone, you're going to win at this game 50% of the time. But how do we improve those odds? Tip number 1, lead with paper. Less experienced players, and especially men, tend more often to start with a rock, which is perceived as strong and forceful. Your best strategy then is always to lead with paper. That way you can start with a win. It's also true that inexperienced people often give the same throw twice, so play to expect that. But they then also rarely play 3 in a row, as people hate to be seen as predictable. So if you see 2 the same, play the third to expect a change. Tip 4. If you're ever stuck for an idea, play the throw that would have lost to your opponent's last throw. Inexperienced players often subconsciously play the throw that beat their last one, so you do the opposite, you'll win. And finally, when all else fails, play paper. Statistically speaking, in competition play, scissors is thrown least often, which gives paper a slight edge. 5 top tips of rock, scissors, paper. You'll never lose again.
Table 4. Table 6. There it is, 1. Breakfast.
1 steak and kidney pie, 1 vegetable pasta, sausage and mash twice, and can you calculate the speed of light, please?
Speed of light. Speed of light. Okay. That. I'm going to use cheese. You could use sugar-coated greaseproof paper in this. I prefer to use a hard cheese because they break more easily. Before the 17th century, everybody thought that light travelled instantaneously, but Galileo disagreed, and in 1638, he stood on a hill with a shuttered lantern, and he got his mate to stand on a hill 1.68 kilometres away with another shuttered lantern. Galileo would open his lantern, light would travel to his mate would signal when he's received the light from Galileo's lantern. But of course, light travels so fast that this wasn't going to work, was it? I mean, even Galileo made mistakes. Should have used Parmesan. Of course, there's a better way of doing that. Is that either get somebody else to do it for you, or here's one I prepared earlier. Meters. I'm going to whack this in the oven. Right. Well, we don't need things that rotate in the microwave. We want the plate to stay absolutely still. So I'll put that in the microwave. I'll put it on for 20. And light travels the distance between London and New York. That's 5,567 kilometres in less than a 50th of a second. In other words, it'll do the trip from London to New York and back again to London 10 times in the blink of an eye. Now that is pretty fast. Yeah, kind of. That might do. If you use your imagination, you can see 2 parallel lines of melted cheese here. Now, what's the significance of that? Well, it's got to do with the microwave oven. In the microwave oven, there's a magnetron. It sets up a standing wave, this magnetron, within the oven. Now, standing wave, there's a wave, right? As this wave oscillates from side to side across the microwave oven, it reinforces itself, so you get hot spots at the peaks and the troughs. If we measure the hot spots, which correspond to the melted cheese here, and incidentally, that's why you've got a turntable in your microwave oven, because if you didn't have a turntable, the food would just cook in certain places but not in others. 62 millimetres apart, I was fairly rough and ready now. The distance between the hot spots corresponds to half a wavelength, so we have to multiply that 62 millimetres by 2, 124 millimetres. Now, to work out the speed of the microwave radiation, in other words, the speed of light, we need one other thing, and that should be provided by the manufacturer. This microwave oven operates at a frequency of 2,450 megahertz. That means that the wave vibrates across the microwave oven at 2,450 million times every second. So let's put that in, 2,450 megahertz. Now, if we multiply those two figures together, the wavelength and the frequency, we get the speed of light. We've got 124, the wavelength in millimeters, times 2450. That's the frequency in megahertz. See what we get. It's 303,800. So it's 303,800 kilometers per second. The speed of light, accurately, is 299,792 kilometers per second. So we've not done too badly for a domestic microwave, have we? We're only about 3% out. Not bad. Now, how's that pie doing?
Big and small. Go large, where we see what would happen if we take a kid's toy and go that little bit bigger. Blowing up balloons, such joy, a required occupation at party time, and almost as much pleasure as the cakes and jelly. The most fun one can have from a balloon, however, is the popping. Nothing quite beats that pent-up expectation released in a moment of shattered rubber membrane. The perfect candidate, then, to go large. Rubber balloons are made of latex. When the balloon is inflated, the chains of molecules expand, and the resultant stress and strain means that the rubber can be easily popped. When a balloon bursts, the resultant bang is caused not by the sudden release of the gas, but by the shards of rubber flying at over the speed of sound as it snaps back to its original size. Filling a balloon with air might make our bang a trifle ordinary, however. We rather like propane, with a touch of oxygen for that added interest. No pin required for this. A small electrical pulse should be sufficient to effect the bang. And it is. Propane requires minimal energy to ignite. A spark then sufficient to cause the rapid expansion required to blow the doors off, and indeed the walls and roof. In oxygen, it's more a bang than a pop, burning at around 2,000 degrees Celsius. It's a suitable end for a rubber balloon gone large.
So 1 month up, how has Sue got on? Do we now have a lefty on our hands? Well, she gets round the kids' puzzle without a single buzz. And she certainly seems to be quicker with that needle and thread. And the darts? Well, she's not Phil Taylor, but at least they're hitting the board now. And the final decider? The dots test. Previously, she scored 19 with her right and 9 with her left. But now look at the new technique. 1 month ago, when Sue first did the test, her arm was uncomfortably pushed into her side. Now she naturally moves her arm out. It makes the fine movements easier to achieve, and it's paid off in her results. Now, 26 with her right and an amazing 20 with her left.
Well, according to this, your left-handed score now is as good as your right-handed score was a month ago.
That's a bit strange, a bit bizarre, but yeah, I mean, it's great. It's paid off, definitely.
So I think that's a success.
It is, absolutely.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And it's so ingrained, she's even gesturing with her left hand now. Certainly Sue doesn't seem to have suffered any psychological effects from her forced change. So why? Well, it seems that it might well be because Sue hasn't been forced to change hands, but has chosen to do so.
A person who's chosen to become a left-hander will also get a sense of mastery and control because they're suddenly realising they can do things with the other hand even though they thought they couldn't. And of course that's very different, say, from the Victorian situation where school children were taken who wanted to write with their left hand and were made against their will to write with their right hand. That situation, they're being forced to do something they don't want to do. And that's very different. But as long as one chooses to do it and wants to do it, then there's a sense of mastery and control.
So, Sue Rose. She might have to work on her squash a bit, but I think we can safely say she is well on the way to becoming a left-hander.
Ta-da!